Hey guys, I am the Thoughtful Beast, and this channel is all about teaching you how to create your own happiness. Today we are talking about why it's so hard to regulate our emotions. The first thing that I want to talk about is biological factors. And when I say biological factors, I don't just mean predispositions to mental illness. I'm talking about what are you doing to your biology? Are you getting enough sleep? Are you feeding yourself good, nutritious food? Another thing that also affects your ability to regulate your emotions is drinking and using substances. Another biological factor can be whether or not you're physically healthy. If you've had a cold for 3 weeks, it is time to go to the doctor. No one can regulate their emotions well if they're feeling like poop. The next thing that I want to talk about is literal lack of skill. So I didn't really know how to regulate my emotions until about like my mid-20s, if I'm gonna be honest. And I know I'm not the only one. We're not necessarily taught growing up how to cope with our emotions well or how to use them effectively. They don't necessarily teach it at school. Unfortunately, you don't necessarily learn it at home. I learned how to regulate my emotions with dialectical behavior therapy, and it was really helpful. They have a whole module about emotion regulation where I learned a lot about myself and a lot of shortcomings I had. So we have to go out and look for ways to learn. Another thing that makes it hard to regulate our emotions is that our environment might reinforce our intense emotions. Think about a child who's tantruming in the store, right? They're doing it because it gets them attention. It might get them what they want because they might be embarrassing their parent. They're doing it because it works. And us as adults, we might not be throwing ourselves on the floor, but we might be causing scenes, we might be raising our voices, doing things to make someone give us what we want. It's not necessarily good, it's not necessarily good behavior, but it works, and therefore we keep not regulating our own emotions. The next thing on our plate is moodiness. We cannot effectively regulate our emotions if we're letting our moods dictate the rest of our day, how we behave, how we think, or how we feel. Instead, we should be using our wise mind, which is the compromise of our reasonable mind and our emotion mind. Also, what comes with moodiness is the lack of wanting to regulate our emotions. We might not want to regulate our emotions because it's really hard. We have to put in a lot of work. And like we were talking about before, sometimes our intense, unregulated emotions actually get us what we want. But that's not good behavior, right? We don't want to actually be known as this person is going to cry to get what she wants. This person's just going to threaten and bully you to get what she wants. That's not how I want to be known, and this is why it's important to regulate our emotions. Another thing that gets in the way of regulating our emotions is being overwhelmed, burnt out, can't do anything else except for we're just trying to survive. It's really hard to have any emotion regulation at all if you are just overwhelmed with life, if you have a million stresses going on, if you're spread really thin, if you have all these obligations, it's normal to have less control. Everyone experiences burnout and being overwhelmed. So what we need to do is get out of that situation somehow. Sometimes it just means changing your priorities, and sometimes it means making a big change in your life. Sometimes it means making sacrifice, and that can be hard, but you cannot live emotionally well if you're overloaded all the time. So the last thing I want to talk about are myths. There are so many myths about emotions that keep us from regulating them or even accepting that we have emotions, and that is not helpful. You guys know what I'm talking about. Emotions make you weak.
I can't help how I feel. This is just how it is. Emotions are irrational.
Emotions can't be expressed in words. They can only be felt.
My anger is just a part of who I am, and you need to either accept it or leave.
Regulating our emotions may be really hard, but it's such an important thing to do so that we can live fulfilling and effective lives. Emotions can help us further our careers and our personal relationships. When we don't know how to cope with our emotions, when we don't know how to use them effectively, it can cause a lot of suffering. Now that we've learned about some things that make it hard to regulate our emotions, what can we do differently? What can we change and actually have control over to make emotion regulation easier for us to practice? Poor Mitchie.